Yo, are we good? I think we're good. My computer's telling me we're good, so I'm going to assume that we're good. And I'm watching myself in the live stream and trying to verify that it is indeed ready to rock. By the way, for those who are wondering about the why is this camera? I feel like the camera's like zoomed in. Like I gotta sit really far back in order to get this in the shot. Uh, for those who are wondering about the live stream, the giveaway, the two graphics cards that we're giving away to international viewers, as well as the full-on PC build sponsored by Gigabyte and Enermax. Those announcements, those winners, will be announced. When is the date? Let's go ahead and double check. I've had a few people ask me, and I'm like, look, I don't even remember what the. I don't even know what the. I don't know what the date is on those. So let's just go to videos here and let's just see how we doing. What's going on, folks? Hope you guys are doing awesome. I see Zombie Civies. I see what's up, A-Tupin. What's going on, you guys? We were just chatting in our bi-monthly Hangouts chat. If you want to be a YouTube member, it's like one of the things that I try to do to make you guys feel a little more special, feel like you're getting something for your money, which I appreciate, by the way. You're under no obligation to throw money at me, but I'm certainly not going to say no, and I'm going to try my best to make it feel like you're getting something for it. So thanks to those who were in the chat. It was awesome. We had more people this time than last time, which is an improvement, and the time before that we had nobody. So I will admit that was the first time we ever did it, so not many people knew about it, but I did make the announcement in the YouTube whatever feed, so you can target members specifically, kind of like you can do with Patreon, like tiers and stuff. Anyway, I wanted to check the giveaway date. Let's do that real quick. So if you click on the giveaway date, let's see, let's click the giveaway link first. That would be helpful. And it says, my eye's itching. It says the giveaway ends, what day is it? What day does it end? Is it? Oh, 3 days left. Okay, so what, the 16th? Is it 13th now? Yep, so the 16th is when you guys will know who won. And, I mean, look, your odds are going to be low. I'm not going to sugarcoat that, but they're odds. At least you got something. At least you got something. Let's see here. Someone's saying I'm too quiet, so I'm going to turn myself up. If I peak, it's your fault. Just saying. I'm turning myself up because I am like in the yellow, solid yellow. I was before. Now I'm like almost in the red. So anyway, if you guys complain about it, I will try to fix it. So let me know how it sounds now. Let's see. Smitty says bi-weekly, meaning every other week. Yeah, that's what I meant then, bi-weekly. I guess I was looking at that inside out. I was thinking bi-weekly meant twice a week. Yeah, that makes more sense. Anyway, yeah, that giveaway video is up on the channel if you want to check out how to enter and you haven't entered yet. There are 2 chances to win for international viewers, and there is a single chance to win a full-on PC for lower 48, contiguous 48, whatever you want to call them, continental 48 US. So if you live in Hawaii or Alaska, you count as international. But the good thing is you have 2 chances to win the international giveaways, and those are graphics cards. And to be honest, if we just look at my demographics for the channel, about half of you are US based and the other half of you are not. So technically, international viewers have twice the odds that US viewers do. Granted, the US viewers have a chance to win something much more valuable. So that PC is at least $1,000, probably a little more than that. There's a 2070 in there and a 9700K. That's already like $1,000 almost. So it's over $1,000 worth of parts in that PC. But there's only one chance to win that for obvious reasons. It's one PC. Graphics cards, it's easier to split those up. So one of those going to somebody in some other part of the world, and the other one's going somewhere else in some other part. Who knows? Maybe 2 people from the same country will win. I have no idea. By the way, I've had like a few people from India. I don't know why specifically Indians were asking this, but if you live in India and you are curious as to whether or not you are valid to enter the giveaway, the answer is yes. You can enter the giveaway. You are an international by definition. I actually defined it in the video. So just felt like I need to point that out. A few people from India were asking that question. So yes, if you are not in the lower 48, you are international, you are eligible. If I can't get you the PC, or well, not the PC, I expect to be able to get it to you in the 48 states. But if I can't get you the graphics cards for whatever reason, maybe like DHL or USPS or UPS or FedEx won't ship to your country or your specific city, then we'll work out something else. Maybe we can just send you a cash equivalent or something like that. So, yeah, that's really the extent of the giveaway thing. I will have a video coming up very soon to recap that and also to announce the winners. We're also going to be upgrading the giveaway PC with some spicy cable mod cables. So you guys stay tuned for that. You know how much I love them custom cables, especially if you got the money for it. All right, let's see here. I Am Groot says, I had Science Studio for 1440p gaming with 1080 Ti. Which Zen 2 CPU would you recommend? I'd say 3700X. That's what I said in my review. I think the 3700X is the best, so far the best value CPU for gaming. But the 3600 would also be one to consider because you're going to get almost equivalent 8700K performance out of that chip for $200. But because you have a 1080 Ti, I would say go a little up because you can be a little more future proof. Although I hate that term, and cop yourself a 3700X, which I think is an incredibly good CPU for the money. All right, so yeah, let's talk about that. Let's recap. I did see a super chat real quick. Let me get that one. I see Rapey. I don't know, Soto. What's up, Soto? $1.99 super chat. All right. Thanks for the B350 video. No problem. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. And if you're curious, I have the A320 video up now. So we actually got a 3900X to work on an A320 motherboard. So there's also that video if you're interested. Anyway, yeah, glad you enjoyed that. And what's up? Max Stenheiser says, it's your boy Greg in all caps. What's going on, Max? Good to see you. Yeah, let's recap Ryzen, well, Zen 2. I want to say Ryzen 2. It's really Ryzen 3, Zen 2. It's confusing. Ryzen 3000. Let's recap 3700X and 3900X. What do I really think? No one cares. Asked a good question. We'll start with that. 3700X or 3800X. I've had quite a number of you, actually, especially on Twitter, which is where I want you to guys... I want you to ask questions on Twitter. If you have a question about something or you have an issue with a part or whatever, you can ask the question directly on Twitter to me. I will see it. I go through every single notification, so I'll see what you tweet to me. Or you can address the question in Discord, and not just me, but many people will get to see it and chime in. So if you want more than one viewpoint, if it's an opinion maybe, I suggest doing it on Twitter, or on Discord, excuse me. Our public Discord is linked in the description. It's a permalink. And then... you could also Facebook message, but I don't really go through Facebook Messenger a lot. It's just there's so it's just kind of a clutter there, and usually people write really long messages. The good thing about Twitter is it forces people to condense their questions, so it's better for me. It saves me time. I can't afford to be what's the word I'm looking for? Not client. I can't afford to I can't even think about it. No, whatever. Anyway, I can't advise everybody all the time on their PC needs. So my go-to is ask it on Twitter because it's condensed. I can usually get through them pretty quick. Sometimes I can even answer in 1 or 2 seconds. So that would be something really really easy for me, but it'll also give you the feedback that I hope you're looking for. John Kraus, I hope I said that correctly, but welcome to the member squad, John. If you are a member, you can join us every second week and fourth week of the month on Saturday, right before these live streams, and that way you can get more one-on-one time with me. So we just had one of those calls on Hangouts, and like 4 or 5 of us in there, we're just chatting it up for an hour. So it's a cool way to just be a little more... It sounds sexual. I don't mean it to sound sexual, but it's a good way to be more intimate with those who feel like, throwing money at me. Basically, there's no other way to put it. I mean, it's like $5 a month, and I think we get like $3.50 of that. So it's not something I really promote a lot, but the button is there if you're interested. I appreciate that. Anyway, back to the question. I see Bob Flanders. Let me get to that in just a second. I want to answer this question first. 3700X or 3800X? This is my perspective on that. The 3800X has a slightly higher boost frequency, a slightly higher max boost overall, which means that under certain scenarios, assuming you have a board that's capable of pushing these kinds of frequencies with an appropriate amount of power delivery that's stable, you want minimal voltage ripple, you want low enough temperatures and a steady enough current supply that you can maintain higher boosts for longer, then you should, in theory, have a better CPU at stock with a 3800X. Now, how much better? Does 200 megahertz justify a 30, 40, 50, actually in this case upwards of $70 price delta? In my opinion, the answer is no. And that's why I think AMD decided to source out and to send samples of the 3700X and the 3900X, not the 3800X and 3900X. It sounds a lot better to say, hey, we got 8 cores, 16 threads, 4.4 gigahertz max boost for $329. Sounds a lot better than saying, hey, we have 8 cores, 16 threads, max boost of whatever the 1800 or 3800X is, 4.5, 4.6 max boost, whatever, for $399, basically $400. Sounds way better at $329, right? And really, you're paying for a slightly better bin chip because that's why they can boost slightly higher, right? They can handle the frequencies higher at lower voltages. And so you have that trade-off. But again, does that justify a $70 delta? In my opinion, no. Ali, the Discord link is permalinked in the video description. Everything that you need is in the video description. That's why the video description exists. But yeah, so in a nutshell, I do not think that the 3800X is justified at a $70 price hike. Now, if it came down to $350, and then we're talking $20, $30, different story. I might say, yeah, the 3800X is great, and look, it's the cost of a cheap CPU cooler to upgrade. That's my opinion. I think that it's just a little too expensive right now to justify the small performance delta, and you're only going to get from a 200 megahertz difference in boost frequency across 1 or 2 cores. That's typically how it scales. You're only going to get maybe like 5 extra FPS if we're talking about a game that's already playing at 120 or 130 FPS. Does that $70 really make that much sense in the CPU side? No. In my opinion, take that extra $70 saved when you forego the 3800X in favor of the 3700X and spend it on a better graphics card. Does that make sense to you? That's the difference between a 2060 and a 2070. That's the difference between a RX 580 and a Vega 56. That's the difference between a GTX 1070 and a GTX 1080, right? So you could spend your money in better places if you want a game. Even if you're just content creating, I would say that saving the money is a better option. You could get a way better cooler, have a quieter system, you could get more RAM, you could get a better motherboard. There's a lot of stuff you could do with $70, and I don't think you should throw it all into a CPU basket where you're only getting an extra 200 or so megahertz of boost. So yeah, sorry about that. Someone said the camera's focusing on the microphone, so I'm gonna move that out of the way. Actually, let me go ahead and just lock. I'll just go ahead and lock the focus. Sorry about that, guys. Let's click on video capture device. Let's pull up the video configurator. Focus. Yeah. Auto. Yeah, turn that off. Yeah, that's not in focus. Let's get it way back. That's better. Apply. Okay. And we're going to hit done and we're going to lock it. Okay. Shouldn't focus anymore. Sorry about that. And I know that it's like a webcam, so like the quality's not that great. But this isn't supposed to be like a super hardcore, fancy stream. I'm not really into that. It's just a live stream. You guys are just here to hear me talk and to chat it up with me. So, yep. Cam's going to be blurry. That's just because it's a cheap webcam, again, for Hustler Maniac. We also had another member. I wanted to point that out. I just saw that someone became a member here. It was a Hustler Maniac 85. It's actually you. What's going on, Hustler? I appreciate the membership. Again, Hangouts. We have dedicated streams, basically, where you guys can call me and talk to me for an hour before the live stream. We chatted it up before. So, yeah, hopefully that's something that you feel like is allowing you to get some of your money's worth. A Tupin, that $3.20 super chat, 320. F's for that poor A320 board from yesterday's video. Got pretty toasty. But you know what? What I was surprised by with that motherboard is that the VRMs themselves, like the MOSFETs in particular, really didn't get that hot. The chokes did, but again, like I said in the video, the chokes are not like, it's just like a bunch of powder and copper. Like it's not anything that I would be concerned about. I checked several sites that confirmed, including one of them was actually hardcore overclocking. That guy knows his stuff. Like he does tons of motherboard reviews, and he looks specifically at power delivery. And even he said that the chokes, who cares? If chokes are like at 150C, then chances are other stuff on that board is about to die. But it wouldn't, like, the chokes themselves would be concerned about. So I was probing chokes just because that was an obvious place to look at through the IR thermometer. But the MOSFETs themselves, at least according to that fluke meter, really weren't that hot. So that just tells me, again, the board was kind of throttling itself. It was the board throttling power because it can't handle huge amounts of power delivery. And it's a 320 board. What do you expect, right? Let me get up to the other super chat here from Bob Flanders. What's going on, Bob Flanders? $7.77 super chat. That's a good number. I appreciate that, Bob. Hi, Greg. How are you doing? 3700X or 3900X to replace 4790K. What motherboard? Make believe money doesn't matter. Okay, all right, Bob. I like this. All right. So I'm kind of going to summarize again my 3900X review, because what I really wanted you guys to take away from that comparison was that for a vast majority of you, 12 cores is kind of pointless. It's something that I think AMD says, well, there's probably a market for it. In fact, they know there's a market for it. That's why it exists. But that market is small. So the ways that we're going to counteract that and kind of bring this into mainstream, because it's on a consumer-grade chipset, right? It's on AIM-4. It's not Threadripper anymore. The way we're going to counteract this is twofold. First off, we're going to make it available on the consumer chipset, which is incredible. The fact that we could even run that on an A320 board, which we confirmed on this channel in the last video, is awesome. But then on top of that, the fact that they're only going to charge $499, and I'm saying like only $500, like that's a lot of money. But for a 12-core CPU, think about how much we had to spend for a 12-core CPU 6 years ago, right? $499 is peanuts compared to what that stuff used to cost, especially at those frequencies. Usually when you buy those high-end Xeon CPUs, either they're locked or they have low base frequencies. Like really, we're talking like 2 gigahertz low, right? Because for servers, you don't need a really fast processor. You just need a processor with multiple cores for VMs or whatever you happen to be doing. So the fact that they made it mainstream, I think, was the point. They just wanted to say, look, this is what we're able to do. And yes, we think people will be able to use 12 cores. There are certainly cases out there for them. But is it something that we expect many, many people to buy just because, whatever, just because they want to have 12 cores? No, I don't think so. I don't think that they went into this expecting the 3900X to be the best seller. Obviously, lower priced chips are going to be way more appealing to the masses. The 3600X is going to be an incredible CPU from a value perspective. It already is. A few reviewers have already confirmed that. We're going to get our hands on a sample here this week, so stay tuned for that. The other issue that I'm sure some of you are wondering about is the gaming scenario and the being future-proof, right? So that was why I was sure in that video to show the streaming capabilities of both the 3700X and 3900X, and to show you that the deltas, so like the FPS loss, the percentage loss on the streamer side, frame rate, was really about the same. So if you have a CPU that is really saturated, let's say we have our 3700X is totally saturated from streaming and gaming, right? Or let's say it's totally saturated already from just gaming. So let's say GTA 5 is using all 16 threads, which it doesn't, but let's assume for the purpose of this argument it does. If it's using all 6 threads, or not 6 threads, if it's using all 16 threads, then if you decide to stream on top of that, you're going to see a harsher cut into your streamer side frame rate. That's because the CPU was already being essentially choked from the start. When you add more of a workload on top of it, it's going to compound itself, and you're going to see the CPU make serious compromises in your frame rate. Now, if you have some breathing room, let's say you move from the 3700X up to the 3900X, and now all of a sudden you have 4 extra cores and 8 extra threads that are just kind of hanging out, and GTA 5 is not using those, then you would see a smaller margin, a smaller drop in overall performance in-game, a lower frame rate drop, ultimately because that CPU isn't being choked from the start. Now, GTA 5 is not a good example of this because GTA 5 is, you saw in the benchmarks, some of those threads weren't being utilized at all. So don't take this at face value. I'm just using it as an example here. The issue, though, with the argument that, well, the 3900X is better for streaming, is that it really only applies to a certain number of games. Very few games are going to saturate 8 cores, let alone 12. So if you can find a game that you play a lot, let's say you exclusively stream Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which did happen to use a good extent of the threads that we threw at it. The 3900X was, I would say, relatively saturated. Not fully saturated, but every thread for the most part was at around 50% or more utilization, which means that you could use more cores to offset workload from single cores, and in theory, with an all-core overclock benefit to an extent. I don't recall if Shadow of the Tomb Raider benefit from a manual overclock or not, but if it did, it wouldn't be a serious benefit, I wouldn't think. So with that in mind, then you could probably make the case for the 3900X. But because our results, in GTA 5 at least, showed that the 3700X lost the same percentage of frame rates that on average, and across 1% and 0.1% lows, if I recall correctly again, that the 3900X lost, then you could just say, well, the 3700X is good enough because I'm losing the same percentage of frame rate. So my loss, what I'm foregoing, let's say I lose 10% of my average frame rate, right, for the entire stream, then I'm losing 10% on the 3900X too. Like, I'm saving $180 to literally have the same performance impact that a $500 CPU would have. So my justification is for the 3700X, even for streamers, because 8 cores is still future proof. That's something that AMD is certainly trying to change. They're trying to make that consumer grade now, and they're trying to make it, I mean, it is consumer grade, but they're trying to make it the standard now. And you can tell by the way they're aggressively pricing their products, right? I mean, they're making 8 cores attainable to the masses, and that's difficult. That's something that Intel surely hasn't done at this point yet. It would be great if they did, and maybe Intel will follow suit. Maybe AMD will pull Intel into that ring, and then you'll notice that AMD, well, it flip-flops, right? There used to be a time when AMD was awesome, and then kind of flip-flopped, and then Intel made the superior product, and then Intel kind of got slow. They got sloppy. They didn't have to be competitive because they weren't being competed with. And then AMD comes back and says, yeah, well, we got this stuff now. And then look, oh, we're improving it. And then, oh, we improved it even more. And what do you know? We're basically neck and neck with you. And our prices are more competitive than yours. Ha ha. Oh, and power consumption. We also win in the power consumption front, too. We might not be the best overclockers, but we're giving our consumers 95% of your performance at 70% your cost. Isn't that awesome? So, yes, Daniel, to answer your question, my answer is the 3700X is the better buy. It's the best buy of any 8-core or 12-core CPU on the market to date if you want to buy new. There's a case for the 2700X at a deep discount. There's also a case for the 1700X at a deeper discount. But again, you are losing performance on account of the node change, also the fact that the clocks are lower, and you might lose support elsewhere, like extreme memory profiles, things of that sort, if you drop to B350 or X370. Excuse me. So SantiX says, doesn't the extra 4 cores help a lot on the streaming side? No, I just answered that question. Rewind the live stream. I just talked about that. CD Turfy. So with all this said, who would you say the 3900X is for? I said it in the video. I would say 3900X is for heavy productivity minded people. If you, I mean, in a nutshell, if you use products that take advantage of the core counts, you could run a VM. You could, in theory, you could run multiple VMs with this chip, this 12-core chip, and you could potentially turn it into a heavy streamer, renderer, and gamer all at the same time. There's a lot of stuff you could do, but how many people are actually doing those kinds of things, right? If you do a lot of coding and compiling, things of that sort that I really don't dabble in, then there's a case for it. Productivity workloads that utilize 12 cores. If you're doing DaVinci Resolve work, right? AMD chips, especially higher core count AMD chips, benefit greatly in DaVinci Resolve. And so it really depends on the program, on the platform. I tried to emphasize this in the video. I said for my use case, I thought that in Premiere Pro, the 9900K was still the better bet. I tried to show that in my benchmarks, and that addresses some of the criticism that I got, especially on Twitter. Or not Twitter, excuse me, in the comment section. Of course it'd be in the comment section of YouTube. It's kind of it's a mixed bag with most videos in the comment section. But the ones that typically fare up top, or a lot of people agree, hopefully are positive comments. If they're not, then I probably did something wrong, or you guys see some kind of conflict or whatever. Like, I'll address it, and I'll probably end up not doing videos like that again if I get that kind of negative feedback. But in this case, I kind of ranted a bit on Twitter because I had a few people point this out. There are ways to do it constructively. There are ways to do it constructively. I thought that I had a tech tuber who was constructive in the way he addressed it. I felt like I was constructive in my response. Essentially, he thought that it was a weird test to enable hardware encoding in a situation in which it's very specific. And my answer to that is, well, that's my workload. I'm going to test workloads that I'm familiar with because I can explain them better. I said that in the video. Also because other people I expect are in similar situations. They are also rendering. They are also, warp stabilizing in Premiere. Premiere is a very popular, albeit annoying at times, platform for video editing, and it's just the one that I've used for a long time. I've been wanting to switch. I have switched somewhat on my mobile side. I use DaVinci Resolve every now and then. It's difficult to adjust to, but it's also not difficult because the functions are essentially the same. They're just in different places. So yeah, my transition is slow, but very steady. I will say though that on the desktop side, when I'm in my office, Premiere Pro is what I use. So the way I ran that test was I said, I'm going to use everything I can for every CPU. Ryzen consumer chips do not have IGPs. As a result of that, there is no specific optimization in mind for AMD CPUs because most of them don't have IGPs. And on Intel's side, there is support for QuickSync. And my decision to use QuickSync for the 9900K was based solely off the notion that I would also have enabled it on the 3900X and the 3700X. If I had other Intel CPUs in that list that had IGPs in them, I would have enabled them in there as well. You would have seen a 9400 basically neck and neck with a 3900X if I had thrown that in there. That's how good QuickSync is. So it would have been, in my opinion, a sin to forego a very prominent and very obvious just advantage that Intel has in this specific case. Now, is it specific? Yes. Is it being nitpicky? No, because I use it every day. It'd be different if it was let's say it's a specific video effect that I use maybe once every month in one video, right? That's getting a little weird, right? Like, why would you throw this one exception in there to make Intel look good? I could see that argument. If that's what you guys were saying, and I'm not saying all of you were saying this, most of you were fine with those tests and you understood why I did them. But a few people were just making baseless accusation, that the typical BS, like, oh, looks like Intel sponsored you for this like it was literally an AMD review where I told you guys to buy the AMD CPU at the end of it over the Intel CPU, and I still got accused of being a sponsored Intel fanboy. So I guess I'm doing something right? When a few people are still pissed off. You're not going to please everybody. That's something you learn very fast in this industry. But to be told after all of this work that took 2 or 3 weeks to compile, I am a one-man show. I do all of my own tests. That is it. I have no one else to do these tests with me or for me. It is all me, and I take pride in my work because it takes time to put together. And I'm confident in my work, else I wouldn't post it on my channel with 500,000 subscribers, right? 500,000 or more potential viewers. So if it gets posted, I'm confident. Now, that's not to say that my testing is always perfect. There could be something I do wrong. I had a typo in that video. I'm pretty sure I said, what did I say? I said MPBS instead of MBPS. That was something I caught during the upload process. I was like, oh crap, and I didn't want to re-upload it because then it would have taken that much longer, and I wanted to push it out at prime time. So yeah, that was an issue. But anyway, yeah, so people were, in a nutshell, pissed that I enabled QuickSync, and they thought it was unfair. That's literally the word that a lot of them used. They said it was unfair, and I disagree wholeheartedly, because I said in the video I would have enabled the same thing with the AMD CPUs had these AMD CPUs included IGPs. And that's one of the things that a lot of people don't think about, because most of us have discrete GPUs, but you cannot just plop a 3900X in a Ryzen motherboard that has HDMI out and get it to work without a discrete GPU. There's nothing in here to drive video. There's no video oriented stuff baked into this, like for specific video outs. You have to have a dedicated card for that, a discrete GPU. And so is it a big deal? No, I'm not gonna, like, it's something I'll point out. I'll say, yeah, look, just keep in mind you have to make sure that you have a discrete card, a discrete graphics card for these Ryzen CPUs, else you won't get any picture on your screen. That's just a byproduct of Ryzen architecture. There are exceptions. You could get a 2400G, a 3400G, a 2200G, be my guest. But those are not extremely powerful CPUs by any means. So you have trade-offs. Now, Intel does the same thing now. You can get F-SKU CPUs from Intel, and they don't come with IGPs. And they're typically a bit cheaper. We did a review on the 9400F. It was like $150, $160 Core i5, 6-core, without an IGP, that I thought was a really good bang for the buck at the time. Now with Zen 2 out, I don't think it's bang for the buck anymore. You can get a 3600 now for $200. It's going to blow that out of the water. So the things change. But my stance, in my opinion, makes sense. And so I won't retract it. I won't backtrack and say, yeah, I probably should have done it differently. I did it that way because that's my workload. That's what I use, and you can see how effective it is in the graphs. The 9900K rendered that video, that 5-minute video clip, the same video clip that the 3900X rendered, in literally half the time with 4 fewer cores, right? That's pretty impressive. And there's also some misconception about there's a misconception about CUDA acceleration, and a few people also thought that, like, I got a comment at one point, and it was it was about the fact that I had discrete cards in all these setups. It was the same Asus Strix 2080, right? And there was something I got from one person that said, why did you not just enable CUDA acceleration like most people and have your graphics card do the rendering for you? Like, I don't I didn't think I had to educate people on this. I don't expect everyone to know it, but we've talked about it before on the channel. Others have talked about it. CUDA acceleration does next to nothing for a video render. It just doesn't. There are effects, there are color grading things you can do with CUDA acceleration that will allow the graphics card, if it's an NVIDIA card that's supported, to do some work. It will offload some of that work to your graphics card, to your 2080 or whatever you're using. But when you click that render, that export button, right, whether it be in Media Encoder or the default Media Encoder in Premiere, there's not much at all that your graphics card is going to do. Whether or not you have CUDA acceleration enabled, which, by the way, it was enabled for every single Adobe test. You would expect it to be exactly the same, and it was, so that it was a fair enough comparison. So I don't get it. Let's see. I'm going to read a couple comments here. Gene says, it's like if you were comparing cars as a reviewer, would you not point out that a Jeep Wrangler has removable doors, which may be something someone wants? Yeah, and look, like I think you're on the right track, Gene. I think that the issue people had, though, was that it showed the Intel CPU just massacred the 3900X in that one test. And in Warp Stabilizer, it also won. You wouldn't expect it to win just on paper, right? Because it has 8 cores instead of 12 cores. But Warp Stabilizer also uses some of that IGP. Someone said that the IGP is going to become the aux cord in 2025 or whatever. I disagree wholeheartedly. I think there's so much you can do with an onboard graphics processor that it would be foolish to completely get rid of it. So there will always be a case for it, I think. And so I think those CPUs will always exist. Whether or not they're mainstream or not, that's a different story. But Intel's been making it work for years, and certainly workloads are taking advantage of it, including the one that I showcased. So the video render utilizing pretty much to the max the IGP is why it destroyed the 3900X. And look, if this was flip-flopped, I really think that especially like the diehard AMD fanboys would have freaked out at that. I think they would have just lost their crap because AMD fanboys, the Intel fanboys, excuse me. I should have said that backwards. Yeah, Intel fanboys. Because if it's AMD doing really well and Intel didn't look as good, then yeah, I think the Intel fanboys would be pretty pissed. So I think it goes both ways, right? Like I don't think you can really please everybody, but at the same time, I think gimping a CPU is worse than showing it at its best. So if you're intentionally gimping something, if you're just removing some sort of support that it has, then you are effectively not being honest with the viewer. That's my opinion. Now, look, that's not to say, like, I'm not trying to say that other reviewers who didn't include QuickSync support were trying to be dishonest with you. Maybe it just wasn't something that crossed their mind. Maybe it's not something they use very often. I recommend that they do. There's a huge advantage. You literally cut your render times in half, if not more, by enabling hardware encoding. And again, it's a multi-step process. You have to download Intel drivers, Intel UHD drivers, assuming they're not already installed. You have to enable something in the BIOS. You have to enable onboard graphics. So it's not something you can just click once and be done with. It's a little process. So maybe that's why they didn't have it enabled. But most reviewers that I saw did not have QuickSync enabled, and that kind of pissed me off. It's just like, why are you not showing the CPU at its best? Because that's what I'm doing for the 3900X. I'm showing it at its best. I showed it literally at stock because that's how it performs best. I didn't show it manually overclock because then you're not doing it a service in single or dual core workloads. And so I think that, yeah, I think that it had to be done. I had to show it because it just, I wouldn't want to gimp. If I gimped an AMD CPU, like if I turned off the IGP in an AMD CPU and ran it, like some of the other reviewers ran the Intel 9900K, I think that AMD fanboys would have been really pissed off with me. So I think the sword, again, cuts both ways. I think it's justified. Anyway, that's my addressment of that criticism. I think that, yeah, I would do it again, and I would explain it the same way I explained it before. It's something I use every day virtually in Premiere. Now, and I also pointed out in that same video, if you're using another program like a DaVinci Resolve, 3900X would likely win. And the reason why is because DaVinci Resolve can take advantage of more cores. It tends to be optimized a bit better for higher core count chips. If you throw in a Threadripper 16 core, it does an amazing job at rendering in DaVinci Resolve. I know that on account of other reviewers who have done similar tests. So I was sure to point that out. I said, look, this is program based, so it depends on the program. But the program I use is Premiere. That's why I'm showing it. I've used Premiere for pretty much every CPU review that I've done since the beginning, because I've used Premiere since the beginning of this channel. And yeah, I'd do it again. Anyway, off of that tangent, you guys are awesome. I'm gonna scroll back up here and get to some of the stuff that I missed, some of the goodies. Let's see here. Okay. David Anderson donated a $1.99 super chat. It says, what's the deal with MSI B450 BIOS size limit? So ROM size is an issue. That was something we addressed when we met with AMD. They were talking about how motherboard vendors were going to have to act certain features in BIOSes in order to get Zen 2 support on older boards. Now, I didn't expect it to be as big a deal with B450 and X470 because we expected support from those two motherboard chipsets straight up, with a simple BIOS update. But the older boards, especially like the B350 boards, the X370 boards, they, and apparently your B350 board, have to cut certain features, and that also rolls into the UI as well. Certain BIOSes, I even saw this on, I forget whose website it might have been Gigabytes, might have been ASRock's. I don't know, maybe it was ASRock's because we did the B350 BIOS flash there. But some of those BIOS revisions, when you update, the UI got simpler. It got more basic looking, and that's not typically how it works, right? If you update BIOSes, typically they add more features. But because the ROM size is limited, a lot of these chips are only, I don't know what the size limit is. It's something small. It's got to be in the realm of 10, 20, 30, 40 megabytes. I don't know, something like that. Because those file sizes are taking up so much of that space, they have to act certain features. They're doing that with Bristol Ridge. I've noticed Bristol Ridge is one of the things that a lot of these motherboard vendors are axing. Is that a big deal? I don't really think so. Like if you're updating a BIOS for Zen 2, chances are you're not on Bristol Ridge. If you were on Bristol Ridge, then there are certain drivers you could install that would keep you covered during the interim period when you're flashing the BIOS, because you're going to lose that support technically. But yeah, that's just a consequence of ROM size. Why is it that size? I have no idea. I think it's something that's very easily fixable. Yeah, again, I don't design motherboards. I'm not sure what the rationale was behind it. I do know those chips are pretty standardized, and you can see them like they're actually physically like little ROMs on the board that you can swap in and out. But yeah, and also if you brick a motherboard, let's say your power goes out during a ROM flash, something like that, you're gonna have to buy a new chip, and you'll have to replace that chip on the board. That's how you'll get another. That's basically how you'll unbrick your motherboard. That's happened a few times, not to me, but if you're curious if that ever happens to you. Let's see. Chris W became a member. What's going on, Chris? I hope you feel like $100 with that star next to your name. It's one of the perks you get from being a member. You also get the bi-monthly Google Hangouts chats. We just had one before this live stream with a few of the channel members, and that was pretty awesome. We just hang out and talk for an hour straight before the live stream. So I appreciate that. Oliver Yared, $5 super chat. So I'm trying to get through super chats real quick, trying to catch up. Looking at buying a Ryzen 3600 plus ASRock B450M Pro 4, 8 gigs of 2400 megahertz 260. Good deal. Do you know why? Do you know a way to flash the BIOS without a Ryzen 2 CPU? A lot of the motherboards are not going to allow you to do it unless you have a Zen 2, or excuse me, a Zen Plus chip. You could probably get a dud. I'm not sure if you could get a dud from AMD. They used to do it. I'm not sure if they're still doing it. I'm sure someone knows something about it. But I will say that reading that right there, my concern would be your RAM. I think 8 gigs, I mean, it's a good deal. Like, it's hard to complain, but the memory itself is slow. It's not the fact that it's 8 gigs, because that's easily upgradable. You can update to 16 pretty fast. You just pop in through more DIMMs or whatever. But 2400 megahertz is pretty slow. you would benefit from faster RAM, especially for Ryzen. Because remember, those Infinity Fabric dependencies, right? They're tied to memory frequency and latency. So you'll have slower communication between chiplets, between CCXs, as a result of slower memory. And that's just the way the Infinity Fabric works. So that's why Ryzen benefits in a nutshell from faster memory. Scrolling up a little more, Miguel Moreno, $2 super chat. Love from Texas, easily in the top of tech tubers. I appreciate that. Thank you, Miguel. And then Humility, $2 super chat. What's the best CPU for gaming today? If you're just gaming, I would say the 3600. I haven't even reviewed it yet, but I know that's probably going to be the best value CPU. So yeah, there's that. And then we got a deal donated $2 super chat, and then Daniel Silva donated $4.99 super chat. No questions with those. Ask questions. If you're gonna donate to me or throw super chat money on me, ask a question. That way you feel like you're getting something for it. I'd appreciate that. Let's see. Sorry about that. I had to get through this stuff. AMD is offering dumb chips for BIOS updates. Awesome. So Platinum said that. If you have a link to somewhere you can sign up to get a dud chip, that would be appreciated. I'm not sure if they're charging, what they're charging. I mean, I'm sure it's going to be pretty cheap if they're charging anything. But I don't know if you're going to be able to post a link in the live chat. If you can't post a link in the live chat, post it on Discord or tweet it at me, and I will sticky it to the top of the video description for those who are curious. So yeah. Bob, we have tried to deactivate Patreon, so you shouldn't be if you're still donating to Patreon, I suggest just becoming a member, because that's we're trying to funnel it through YouTube now and not Patreon. It's just too complicated, and I don't like having multiple platforms for this kind of thing. So yep, I would suggest canceling. You don't have to become a member, but I know who you are, Bob Flanders. You've done a lot for us. You've supported us from a long time ago, more than a year. I would say probably at least 2 years. It's as far back as I can really remember. Yeah, I mean, Patreon, we're trying to just get rid of that. We can't completely terminate the account for tax purposes, but you should not be donating there anymore. And that's why we don't even link it in our video descriptions anymore. Okay, let's see. Agent Blunt says Ryzen 3 on X570 still have RAM issues with 4 sticks. I heard this. I don't know if that's confirmed or not, but I have heard that. I was sure to test when I got my sample kit from AMD, my reviewer kit. I was sure not to use the memory that they included in the box. I'm going to show you guys what they included. Give me 1 second right here. I took a picture of these on Twitter, but I didn't tell you where I got them. So the memory that came in our Ryzen reviewer kits was from G.Skill, and it was Trident Z Royal. It was these gold memory modules, right? And they included 2 of them. Now the timings, all right, so here we go. 3600 megahertz, which of course is optimal for Ryzen. Sorry, my nose is itching. I don't know why. 3600 megahertz, and then cast latency 16. That's 16, 16, 16, 36, which is pretty good. I don't know if these are B dies. I don't know if all Royal kits are B dies. I don't think so. The code is 16D-16 GTRG. So GTRG is the model number on these. But I purposefully didn't use these because I felt like, okay, well, duh, AMD is going to give you the best of the best in the kit because they want their CPUs to look the best. So my thinking was, all right, well, I'll just pull out a random kit of RAM from my closet, and we'll just see how it goes. And I actually pulled out another G.Skill kit, but it was a really old kit. It was a G.Skill Trident Z RGB kit, but it was released before Zen 2 came out, I'm pretty sure. And it was not AMD optimized. It wasn't a specific kit for AMD. And so I said, yeah, we're just going to use this kit because it's not the recommended kit, and I just want to see how it fares. And it fared very well. It was easily able to hit XMP. The system reset a few times trying to train the memory, which is something I actually didn't know much about beforehand. So a viewer pointed it out, and I had to do a bit of research into what that actually was and why the system was resetting multiple times. So thank you. I learned something from that comment. Anyway, the memory training is important for Ryzen. It helps train the memory, tighten the timings, get the memory basically as optimal as possible. And that's why the system will oftentimes reset after a CPU swap or you install new RAM or something of the sort. And yeah, So I installed this kind of random Trident Z kit that wasn't sent by AMD, that wasn't meant to be used for an AMD platform necessarily, and it worked just fine. I think it was a 3200 megahertz kit and tight timings. I mean, it was tight timing, but it wasn't an AMD specific kit. So I enabled XMP and it did just fine. That said, AMD deliberately sent a dual channel kit of 2 DIMMs, not 4. So if that tells you anything, I mean, I know it's a little cheaper to get 2, but I would say I heard that it was still an issue. And based off what AMD sent us, the reviewers, I would say that it's still probably a thing. I will check that out. I will see what I can find online, and also test it here. Might as well. Valley123 at Science Studio. Hey Greg, since we are at the topic of videos that triggered people, do you have any plans to revisit the passive cooling video with a CPU tower cooler on a more powerful GPU? Well, I already revisited the video once. I redid it already and had a 2400G passively cooled, and people thought that was a pretty good video. So I'll stop there for now. I do want to buy a one of those palette passive 1050 Ti's, throw that into the system, and also see if the whole thing is stable, and then that would be pretty awesome. But yeah, that's kind of where, I mean, I don't want to like turn this channel into like a passive cool channel. Like, it's not my thing. It's very niche. It's not something I, again, recommend most people pursue. But it was cool to experiment. I thought that was very fun. Chris W, $5 super chat. Again, Chris W, it's the same Chris W that just became a member. I think so. If I recall correctly. Thoughts on Ryzen Mobile, comparing Ryzen 7 3700U, Vega 10, it's 216 at $600 versus 7700 HQ for $750. Secondary 1080p promo machine. Yeah, I don't know much about it. I don't dabble much in mobile. I have never owned a Ryzen mobile laptop. I just never have. Even the ones like that have the AM4 socket, like the desktop socket in the laptops. That would be really cool to test and to experiment with. But I have never gotten my hands on one, so I really don't have the background to give you a definite on that. I will say though, that if we're talking about, well, I don't know. I've never tested Vega 10. If the 7700 HQ has an IGP on top of the 1050, then I would say it would still do better in Premiere Pro. So that would be my assumption, just because I know that the 9900K absolutely slayed everything with Quick Sync enabled. So if I was doing the same thing on mobile, I would want more than likely the i7, despite only having 4 cores compared to 8. I'm not sure how that would affect everything else in the system, but for purely rendering, that would be my go-to. Let's see. What do we have here? No one cares. Let's see. At Science Studio, Micron E die is good. I mean, like, it's not going to be Samsung B dies. So the reason why everyone knows what that one is. My experience with Micron E dies, I think I have one kit that's Micron E. And the only reason I know it's Micron E is because I ripped the heatsink off of it. Micron E. Micron. I don't remember. I know I have a few kits. I know my laptop has Hynix memory. Pretty sure it has Hynix. I don't remember. Maybe it was Micron. I always know because it's the M with the circle around it. I'm trying to think. I don't really know now. I don't remember. I don't even know if I have Hynix memory. I'm sure I have Hynix memory. I just don't know which kits they are. I mean, they don't tell you these things. This is one of the things that I wish memory manufacturers would be more upfront about. The only time they tell you what kind of chips you have is when it's Samsung B die. And even then, they don't tell you all the time. So it's kind of weird. I don't know. Let's see. Chris says, neither have I. It's so inexpensive. For $600, I might pull a trigger on Ryzen. Yeah, I mean, if you're going Zen 2 and a mobile solution, I think you'll be fine. Vega 10 should be fine. For most of your stuff, it's going to be plenty. Let's see here. Recommended megahertz on RAM. Good question. Addressed this a few times on Twitter and elsewhere. For Ryzen, you'll start to notice in the latencies between CCXs really start to taper off. As in level out, you don't see many marginal gains past around 3,200 megahertz. If you're at least 3,000 megahertz or above for memory on your Ryzen platform, and you can get that frequency at a decent CAS and decent timing, then you're fine. You're going to pretty much see the law of diminishing returns really start to take over past 3,000. So again, assuming your timings aren't crap, that would be a fine frequency. Let's see here. Scroll back up just a little bit more. Unknown user says, he says, quit picking your nose. I'm really not picking my nose. I'm actually scratching it. Like, for some reason, my nose is like really itchy, like right on the sides. I don't know why. Like, I was outside working on the car today, and it was hot. Like, my garage faces the sun in the afternoon, which is a big mistake. I should not have started work at 4 p.m. Because it sounds like, oh, 4 p.m. is like, it's not bad, it's not hot. But when you live in Florida, 4 p.m. in the summer is still pretty toasty, you know? And when the sun's facing you, like while you're on the ground, I was like changing the oil in the car. Yeah, so I got pretty dirty, but I took a shower and my nose is just like itchy. So yeah, that's why. I'm not picking my nose. I wouldn't do that on the live stream. Nicholas Lopez, how's Hurricane Barry? I have no idea. I'm in Florida. We're not being hit by Hurricane Barry. Robinson Joseph's Intel is just not competitive anymore. Look, they have to be if they want to exist. I think that there's a certain percentage of the market that would buy Intel no matter what, even if they were extremely more expensive for the same performance or possibly even worse performance. I mean, that's how diehard some fans can be. I would call those people fanboys if they had no other reason to get Intel other than the fact that it's Intel. Unless you have workloads or software suites that specifically require Intel or are optimized for Intel, then that would be a case to pay more for the same performance. But then it wouldn't be the same performance. It would be better performance in that software suite. So Intel has to be competitive. They have to. They are. I mean, that's how this works. If you have competition, the two competing companies will compete on a price level, they'll compete on an advertiser level, they'll compete on a functionality level. Competition drives innovation. That is one of the things that I appreciate about competition. It's one of the things I appreciate about capitalism. Capitalism has its downsides as well. Yes, tons of people are greedy, and that's a byproduct of capitalism. But the whole point is, it's a level playing field because everybody's greedy, right? A few people don't care, but like, if you're willing to be competitive, chances are you're probably greedy to an extent, and you're going to do what you can, hopefully within legal realms, to be as competitive and yeah, just to be as competitive as possible. Intel has a lot of market share, and they have many contracts, and they have many relationships with many big companies just like them, but so does AMD, and AMD is working to regain some of that market share. And what I think is going to happen is the same thing that happened back in the early 2000s and again later in the turn of the decade, 2010, 2011. We're going to have flip-flop again. Intel's doing just fine. They really are, folks. They're not bleeding for cash or anything like that. Their stock prices would reflect this. The reason why I think so many people are saying, oh, Intel's not competitive anymore, is because you're only looking at this through a small lens focused on the consumer, the end consumer who builds PCs for fun, for a living, who cares? They're the end consumer, they're the enthusiast, but they're not the biggest client. There are many other contracts, again, many other people, many other companies that are paying Intel's bills. We're paying a part of it, sure, we're part of it. We're part of the sales structure, but we're not the only part of the sale. And the same goes for AMD. This isn't just Intel we're talking about here. I don't know enough about Intel's capital structure to dive into this in a deep way and just, decide, oh, if we all just started buying AMD, would Intel go under? I don't know enough about it. My assumption would be no, but I don't know. I will say that Intel is just like AMD in this regard. They are competitive. They have to be. They know they are. They know they're in an economy, at least in the States, where competition is everywhere. And at the moment that they lost that competition from AMD is when they got lazy, when they started slacking off, when R&D wasn't at its peak. Intel has its own fabs. You guys realize this. AMD uses TSMC. That's the Taiwanese semiconductor company, right? They use TSMC to create their dies, to create the wafers that end up being split up and thrown into substrate that ends up in your consumer CPU, right? That's it. Robinson says I'm biased. I don't know what he's talking about being biased at. I'm just telling you like it is. I would say the same thing for AMD. In fact, that's what I was willing to do. But Intel has, anyway, back on track. Intel has their own fabs, right? So Intel was working on 10 nanometer for a long time, and it just wasn't there. Now they feel this huge kick from AMD because AMD is saying, hey, look at us, we got all this good stuff at decent prices, actually really good prices comparably. You want a 9900K, you got to pay upwards of $500 for it. You can get almost identical performance minus the IGP, which again is for very few people like myself where I actually use it. Most people don't, so who cares? Minus the IGP for $180 less. Why would you not buy the 3700X instead? Had this been flip-flopped, had AMD been the king for a long time and we just didn't have the competition anymore, and Intel was just slacking on whatever 32 nanometer stuff they had. Let's say they were on Sandy Bridge for like 8 years, which is basically, I mean, I'm not comparing the two architectures, they're different, and there's a reason why Ivy Bridge, Sandy Bridge, and then it ended up being Haswell were superior. But what I am saying is that if it was reversed and Intel happened to be on something at the time that would have been similar, and that would have been Sandy Bridge or Ivy Bridge, and AMD was pushing out just incremental upgrades. We're talking incremental to the point where it's almost like a blurred line. Like, is this the same CPU? Are you guys just throwing this in a new box and just calling it a new CPU? Like, what am I really getting here? Come on, folks. Like, other than like tacking in 2 more cores, causing this thing to run super freaking hot, what am I getting here? If it had been reversed, I'd have told you the same thing. If Intel had a 3700X, right, and AMD had an equivalent competitor for $500, I'd tell you to buy the freaking Intel chip. You know why? Because it's the better buy for you, the value-oriented consumer. So this isn't about red and blue. This isn't about red and green. This isn't about green and blue. I don't give a crap. None of them pay my bills. They don't. We might take ad sponsorships from them. I haven't taken any money from, well, I take that back. AMD and Gigabyte kind of together sponsored some of our Computex coverage. But again, that's not going to sway my opinion, right? Money doesn't buy opinions. Money buys talking points. Like, if you want me to throw up a video praising your product, it's going to be a showcase. It's going to be a video where, yeah, it's a sponsored video. What do you expect? You threw money at me. I'm going to say what you want me to say. Those companies have to approve your video before it goes live. But in a review, they just send you stuff and they cross their fingers and hope it's a good review, but they don't know. There's no guarantee, because I could say whatever I want, because it's a review. It's opinionated. It's based on my experience. It's based on stuff I have in the office that I can test against it. It's based on my perception of value. It's how it's going to be, right? It's I know that most of you like care about money, right? Not like a greedy kind. I mean, I'm sure some of you are a little greedy, but you probably at least mind your checkbook, and you know that you can't just go out and spend freely on whatever you want, because you'll end up in debt and you'll never get out of it, right? Maybe you have a family, you have kids, and you have other more important things to worry about than a freaking CPU in your system, right? So I know that money has to go a long way for most of you. It goes a long way. I try to make it go a long way for me. And I'm the same way. If I buy anything out of pocket, I do my best to do as much research as I can to know that I'm making the best, most informed purchase decision where I'm getting the most value for my dollar. Point blank. I will rarely pay more money for the same performance unless there's a string attached, like a better warranty. Maybe it's just a better product. It has like just maybe more reviews. I've paid more money for a product that looked nearly identical on Amazon because it had better reviews. And you know what? If that's how it helps you sleep better at night, that's fine. It's your money. You handle it the way you want. My job is, again, to help you guys make informed purchase decisions, and that's why I think it's silly to call any review, like any, I could say this confidently. You want to look at any other tech YouTuber out there that I've met, Paul, Kyle, Jay, Steve, other Steve, Brian, I don't care, any of them. If you watch any of their reviews, right, they're going to tell you, in their honest opinions, what they think is the best value for the dollar. And they'll tell you what's the best CPU, they'll tell you what's the best value, and they'll tell you what's the cheapest, what you shouldn't buy, what you should buy. You know why they tell you things, and they you know why they're honest with you? Because they know that you guys are going to bail if they're not honest. They know that if they tell you, oh, you should buy the 9900K instead, it's technically the better CPU still. It's still technically the better gaming CPU. Even if it's just by a few FPS, you guys need to have the best gaming CPU. So spend that extra 180 bucks on the best so that you can have the best. You're going to feel so much better about it. If I preached that, or if it was reversed and let's say it was AMD in Intel's position, and I was telling you to buy the best from AMD instead of the Intel equivalent at much cheaper prices, like, I would lose so many viewers from that. And that's like, we're incentivized to be honest with you. Like, that's what you guys need to understand. If we're not honest with you, if let's say like someone's being paid under the table, not disclosing it, which is illegal, we wouldn't do that here, and they tell you that, yeah, you just, be honest, but also tell them that they should buy it because it's technically still the best. And we went and did that, we would lose viewers. And then if we lose viewers, we don't get any more sponsorships because nobody's watching our channel anymore. So why the heck would you ever feel incentivized to take money to say things that aren't true or to say things that are against your opinion? I would not. I never done this, and I would like to think I never would. That's my honest opinion, and this is how I've lived up to this point. For this channel, I would never take money from a company that I did not think was offering a product of value. If it was a product that I thought sucked, I would not take money from them, because I know that despite getting that one-time payment, however much or little it might be, I'm not going to have the trust of you guys anymore to allow me to do more videos like that. Why? Because someone paid me to say something about a product that I thought was crap, right? And if we've ever been in like a situation where company said, yeah, we'll pay you this amount of money to say something really, really good. It would be just a great thing for you to say this, and that would be awesome. We've pushed back before. In situations where I thought that a product really wasn't as good as they were making it out to be, I would tell them, like, I'm comfortable saying this, not this. If you guys are still okay with it, we can move forward. We can push this sponsored spot. We can do this sponsored video, whatever, right? But if they say, no, this is it. I turned down more money last year in 2018 than I accepted. Put it that way. There's a lot of stuff out there that's garbage. There's a lot of stuff out there that's good as well. And back to CPUs, I think that CPUs, we're at the tipping point. And that's why I was telling you guys, especially after my 3700X review, that I think that 3700X is by far the better value. And you have a much more friendly platform to work with. We got our 3900X to work on a freaking A320 motherboard, a board that wasn't even supposed to be allowed to run Zen 2, and we got it to freaking work, right? From Gigabyte. And this is entirely vendor dependent, but the fact is you can do so much with this platform. It is so versatile. And if you have the dud CPU or a compatible CPU to flash the BIOS, you could really get technically any motherboard with a compatible BIOS to work with any Zen CPU. How freaking crazy is that? Can you do that with Intel? No. Do I expect Intel to do something similar with a similar platform in 5 or 6 years? Kind of. Yeah, I think they feel compelled to now. They feel that that is a huge competitive advantage for AMD. So why would they not copy it? Is it because they feel content with the fewer sales that they have now than they did 4 years ago? I mean, maybe they do. Maybe they do. Maybe they feel content with that. Maybe they feel content with being the more niche, expensive product, right? You can buy a Ferrari because it's a Ferrari, or you can buy a Toyota Camry because it's more reliable. Heck, you can buy a Nissan GTR you used to be able to buy them for about 120 grand. I think now the most expensive Black Edition or Nismo model is like $200,000. It's just starting to get in like supercar territory now, but back in let's say when they first came out in 2008, so let's just say like 2012, you can get a 2012 GTR brand new for a little over $100,000 that did 0 to 60 in 2.9 seconds. Most Ferraris couldn't even do 0 to 60 in 2.9 seconds at that point in time. In fact, I would say almost all of them couldn't do a 0 to 60 that fast. And if that's your metric, if 0 to 60 is your metric for a car, and we're equating that to frame rate, right? Then to get 2.9 seconds for 100K, or you spend 500 grand and get a Ferrari that does 2.7 seconds, right? Where's the real value if you only care about the 0 to 60 time? Because let's be honest, you can't really go faster than 60 in most places in the States anyway, unless you're on a freeway or a racetrack. So if you're in the city, it's really just the 0 to 60. It's the 0 to 50, 0 to 40, 0 to 30, whatever. It's the initial torque, right? It's the pullback. And that acceleration is what I'm trying to equate to FPS now. If that's your metric, if you care about frame rates because you play games a lot and that's really it, first off, I think that's a good metric. All right, there's a reason why we show frames per second for games, because that's kind of like the only metric that matters. Then I'm going to tell you that the better value is the GTR, right? You get it? All right, that's it. There shouldn't even be an argument there. Is it a better value car? Yes. Is it a Ferrari? No. Is it supposed to be a Ferrari? No. Do I think Intel is the equivalent of a Ferrari? No, I'm not saying that. I don't think there's that big of a disparity, honestly. Like, I'm using a 9900K in the system because I render a lot. That is literally the only reason it's still in my system. If I switch fully to DaVinci Resolve, I will switch. I promise you guys, I will switch to AMD. And I'm in the process of switching. I talked about that a little earlier in the live stream. But anyway, it's about value. I don't want you guys to be upset. I don't want you to have buyer's remorse. That would make me feel bad as a reviewer, and it would probably make you lose trust in me. And that is where I want to wrap up that. Thanks for hearing me ramble through that. I do want to run through the super chats at the end here. Let's see here. I'm going to scroll back up here. Okay, Token Tech, $5 super chat. I appreciate that. Oh, Bob Flanders became a member. Bob, I appreciate that, Bob. Again, be sure to drop by our Hangouts that we have. If you're in the Discord, then you'll see the link there. I also link the live chats in the YouTube feed about 10 minutes before we go live on Hangout. So you'll be able to click the link and join the call, and you can just chat with me. Anyway, Token Tech says, hey, Science Dude, I have a 3700X with a custom loop from EK, and I'm hitting over 85C in Prime 95, and idle temps are awful. How are your temps? That's weird. My 3700X was ice cold. And it was hitting, I think, 70C while gaming. And this was with, I mean, some games were more intense than others. Obviously, the more you use your CPU, the hotter it's going to get. But mine was not anywhere near that hot. And I never used a custom loop, but it should be cooler than that. So unless your pump is dead, which I doubt, you'd be able to see that more than likely, or unless you haven't seated the CPU correctly, you just got super unlucky. But I would check the CPU seating. Make sure that you got solid, secure contact. To me, that's like, you got to have that. It doesn't sound like you do because those temps are pretty hot. So I would check that. Let's see. We also have a $1 super chat from Adil again. I appreciate that, Adil. Thanks for watching. We have another $1 super chat from Your Leader Trex. Thank you, Your Leader Trex. Appreciate that. Chris has a $5 super chat. Says, have you seen the videos where some of the smaller tech YouTubers are accusing some of the big reviewers of being biased towards AMD's release? I have not. I don't know who said that. I would love to hear the accusations because I think they would just be really juicy. And as far as I'm aware, none of the big tech tubers, if you want to include me in that, you can. I don't think that I'm technically big. I would say if you're at 1 million subs or more, you're probably a big tech YouTuber. So that would keep Paul, Kyle, Jay, Linus in the ring. I saw almost all of their reviews. I mean, they get pretty redundant after a while, but after they aired, because we all aired our reviews kind of at the same time when the NDA lifted. Granted, it was for different products. Some channels did like all the CPUs at one time. But as for the accusations, I don't really know who they would be accusing if they accused anybody. If you guys know who they were accusing, but I'd love to watch the video. First off, I think it would be highly comical. I'm just kind of, I mean, what's their definition of bias? Like, do they think they skewed data? Like, that's a pretty harsh accusation, and that's potentially defamatory, depending on if it's substantiated or not. So they better be careful if that's the case. But if they're just saying, like, bias towards an AMD, like, what's, again, their justification for being biased, you would have to show that, like, the data was consistent with other reviewers or other finders, but your conclusions were different. But I can't see how your conclusions would be different. Like, if you're value oriented, AMD is the way to go. I've said that since Zen 2. I've said that since Zen. Like, I don't see how you can call that bias. Like, it's just kind of the truth. So it really depends on what they're accusing them of. I mean, maybe they're accusing me. I don't know. That would be really fun because then I could address it directly. But if they're accusing other tech YouTubers, I mean, I'd be curious to see what they're accusing them of. But I highly doubt any of the popular tech YouTubers out there are biased in that sense. I mean, sure, they probably have favorites. Like, I have favorite products that I use, but when I'm trying to be unbiased and trying to show you guys like the data straight up, and then I draw conclusions from that data. My conclusions might be opinionated, but I think they're grounded. I mean, like if I told you again that the 3900X was like by far the way better CPU and everyone should go buy it instead of the 3700X, that to me would be rather baseless, because the 3700X did almost as well as the 3900X in nearly every gaming benchmark, and in some cases the deltas between productivity workloads weren't even justified, right? So the $180 price hike for the 3900X, in my opinion, wasn't justified for the streaming scenarios. So should you buy a 3900X in place of a 3700X for streaming? In my opinion, I don't think you have to. I think you can get by just fine with the 3700X because the margins were the same. The frame rates lost were the same between both CPUs, essentially the same. So yeah, that's my thing. Let's see. Your leader Trex, again, $5 super chat. Appreciate that. It says, my mobile Intel is beating my Threadripper Gen 2 for Adobe renders. Why? It's probably because you have QuickSync enabled. That's probably why. Token Tech totally took everything apart and still bad temps. That really sucks. That means you just have a really hot chip. Check, though. Make sure that check your frequencies. Maybe you have PBO or something else turned on where it's boosting your CPU to as high as it'll go. Look, your idle temps really don't matter as much, especially if your fluid is already heat soaked. So if your fluid's heat soaked, then your idle temps are going to be hot, right? Because the metal, or what essentially would be the metal in your system, it's going to be the fluid in this case. But anyway, water has a high heat capacity, so it takes a while for water to warm up, takes more energy for water to warm up. But once it's warmed up, it's going to stay warm for quite a while, and that will keep your idle temps up as a result, right? So when your temperature deltas are smaller, then your CPU temps are going to be higher. If your temperature deltas are greater, like if you're cooling with liquid nitrogen, then your CPU temps are going to be a lot lower, right? Even at idle, especially at idle. So anyway, yeah, there's that. Let's see. Chris says, my issue isn't the accusations, but the fact that they pulled there are people biased on the reviews, but we won't say who. Oh, and we have names. Yeah. I like if you have something like that, just like roasting in your brain, like just grow a pair of balls and just say it. Like that's how I look at it. That's a personal take. But like if you have that much beef on somebody, like why would you bother figuring out who they are if you're not gonna actually disclose who they are? So like that'd be my thing. I don't know if I'm included in this or not, but even if I'm not, even if I'm not the people that they're talking about, it'd be hilarious if they were, because I would totally grill them, because there's absolutely no proof of that. At least I don't think I've done anything to suggest that. I think you guys would call me out on it if I was being biased. And I've done things that have pissed AMD fanboys off before as well. So I don't think I'm without sin on either side. But yeah, I would just say grow a pair. Say who it is. Why would you tease it if you're not going to say it? Like that's just stupid. You're just trying to get publicity, in my opinion, if that's all you're going to do. So prove me wrong. Say who they are, and then we can talk about it from there. I mean, look, if it's somebody like, let's say they accuse, I don't know. Let's use Kyle. I know Kyle's not this way, but let's just say he says Kyle. I'm not going to like jump in and throw my 2 cents into the ring, but I would love to hear Kyle defend himself, because I feel like Kyle would absolutely trash whoever's accusing him of saying that. So yeah, I just want to, it'd be interesting to see him duke it out. But anyway, all right. I got one more super chat here. It was from Ranjanth. Hope I said that right, Ranjanth. I don't know what currency that is, but I appreciate the support. I appreciate the viewership. And thank you all for watching, especially our members. Thank you, members, for pitching in a little. Well, it was more than 2. I almost said 2 cents, but it's not. It's like $5 a month. But anyway, I appreciate members especially. And remember to stay tuned for our custom Hangouts live streams. If you are a member, it's just a way for me to be a little more personal. We can chat about whatever in a closed Hangout session, so it'll be fun. Anyway, thank you guys again for watching, and we will be back at it, I think, maybe tomorrow night or definitely Monday night with another video. Ciao, ciao for now. Now here comes the awkward, I'm waiting to cancel the live stream. Okay, here we go.